welcome to our listeners. Today we have a real personality with food pumping through her veins. Welcome to Seafood Matters podcast, Jenny Jefferies, award-winning author and food writer. Hi, Jenny.
Hello, Jim. How are
I'm
you?
really well, thanks. Really well. And you?
Very well, thank you. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to have you. Thank you very much. Our pleasure. Where did it all start for you, Jenny?
So I was born in Aberdeen, so I lived in Scotland for 4 years. And I was brought up there, and my mother was a primary school teacher. So I was brought up on microwave meals. But my father really enjoyed bringing in platters of salmon and roast beef and Yorkshire pudding at family get-togethers at the weekends. And he used to work for BP, so he was out and about quite a lot. And then we moved down to a little town called Radlett in Hertfordshire, where I lived my whole sort of childhood. And I think food for me was just something that was really celebratory and family orientated and really communal. And I don't think I really realised how important that was until probably now.
So was it with your parents that it all started?
I think so. I'd always considered myself to be a foodie, but I never quite realised how much I probably wasn't a foodie until I met my arable farming husband, John, on a blind date. But that's another story. So I think I've always really loved food, but I was really ignorant about food provenance and on all the hard work that goes into producing just a simple loaf of bread for our tables. So I've always considered myself to be a foodie. I've loved going out wining and dining at restaurants, food festivals, family and friends, barbecues and things like that. Yeah, so I think it probably all started from a really wonderful childhood, which I'm very grateful for.
It all sounds very exciting, and I love your enthusiasm. It's infectious, actually.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's wonderful to be enthused about food. I think food can mean different things to different people. And I think, one of the most beautiful thing about it is how it brings people together.
Totally. And that's why I often think it's a social thing. It's not just a feeding station. It's social as well. That's why I love things like paellas. I know there's many places you would go and a special meal would be a roast beef or a leg of lamb or something like that. If you come to Outhouse, you're going to sit down to a paella.
Oh,
And if,
lovely.
and if you are, it's because we like you.
Oh, that
But
sounds wonderful.
it's all local, vegetables, all the seafood, and it's just pan in the middle of the table, and everybody's interacting and involved. It's a fantastic way of an evening's entertainment.
Yeah, I think making food the centre of the table where everyone can just help themselves, it breaks down barriers. It really, to have a seat at the table and to enjoy food like that there's nothing better.
I know. Funny, it's just earlier this morning. It was just coming to my head how lucky I think we are, or certainly I feel I am just now, because I was walking down the garden to my wee smoker. I got fish last night from a fisherman friend, so I've got fish smoking. At the bottom of the garden, keep a few hens, so I've got overnight smoked fish, eggs from the hens. My wife was out in the countryside yesterday and picked chanterelles. So it's just the best of food.
Yeah, I think it's lovely to have the opportunity to cook with the seasons and to forage locally, buy sustainably, buying seasonally, and all of those wonderful things, definitely.
I always note the word season. When we had the restaurant, sustainability was an important thing for us. And for me, the pillars of sustainability were, yes, sustainability, but integrity, provenance, and seasonality. To me, seasonality is the key to sustainability.
Definitely, yeah. And I think as a generation, we have become so spoiled. We're so used to sort of seeing strawberries in the winter and asparagus out of season. And I think we've become really disconnected with the seasons. So, yeah, I try and bang that drum to try and, cook and source food and really celebrate food provenance in that way.
Yeah. I make my own sourdough breads, and you'll probably get it. And I mean it. There's as much pleasure in making it as eating it.
Lovely. I love the virtuous circle. Definitely. Source it, cook it, eat it, share
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it's
It's that sour taste at the back of it. I just think it's what a wonderful food. So, did it all start in Aberdeen, or did you come on and things progressed later?
Yeah, I think when it really started for me on this journey was when I met my arable farming husband John on a blind date. And I had never ever before seen a real life combine harvester until I met him. And I think it was the family harvest of summer 2013 when I really just was so overwhelmed at the most amazing harvest and all the hard work that goes into producing just a simple loaf of bread for our kitchen tables. And I think it was a very life pivotal moment when I actually felt really ashamed at my own personal ignorance about food provenance. I had never appreciated where our food comes from and all the people behind the food who work so tirelessly all throughout the year to help put food on our tables. And so I really wanted to share John's story and all the hard work that he does to produce that food.
Yeah, we live in a village. It's actually on just on the edge of a farm. I think it's pretty much sums up what I feel because when it comes to the harvest and the combines are out, I just think it's amazing when you think of all that working with nature. I say with, not against. And it takes months and months and months. And then all of a sudden, in one day, it's over.
And I think for a lot of people, that scene of harvest just goes by without any kind of consideration. I think a lot of people aren't really connected to the British countryside and what goes on their doorstep. Could drive from the length and breadth of the country and see all these beautiful fields, which is just an illustration of the patchwork of work and all the hard work that goes into producing our food. And yet, for a lot of people, they're just so unaware of what goes on. Like I used to be, I never used to be aware of what happens in fields and in the country. So the time of year, which is now drilling, if the rain actually finally stops, and harvest and all of that kind of thing, I just never used to be consider it. It would just never be on my radar at all. So what I try and do is kind of reach out to people like how I used to be before I met John, to try and educate in an informative and an accessible way.
It's funny when I was hearing you talking there and you were saying about the people that don't realize and appreciate it all and it just passes them by. It was going through my mind. You mentioned before about your passion. It just reminded me of my dear old mother. That's where I got my inspiration. And if you said that to her, she would have told you, well, they're the losers.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's not their fault. I don't think anyone is to blame other than lack of education. And perhaps since the Industrial Revolution and the Second World War, the food system is so controlling that I don't think a lot of people, certainly the next generation, have a chance in really appreciating food provenance because we are trapped with ultra processed foods and supermarkets and corporations and people like that completely taking over for the sake of revenue, that there's a lack of appreciation of cooking and working with food in the kitchens and not eating around the tables as a family anymore. There just seems to be so much wrong with everything. And ignorance isn't the fault of the person. I think it's you and I to try and bridge that gap between producer and consumer and to try and campaign for education in the schools on the national curriculum and to really encourage people to choose wisely when they do their food shop and to choose good, highly nutritious, fresh food rather than all the rubbish that is just plastered in our faces.
I, I actually feel it's quite alarming and worrying to the extent it's going to go because and the way it's packaged and put out there, it's as if it's health food. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, I've read books on this ultra processed food. It's our mental health as well as our physical, so it's got enormous implications.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a slow, quiet rebellion happening against the system and against the ultra processed food network. I think there are, more farmers markets popping up. There's more education, a little bit about it, and I think this time next year they would have put a stop to post watershed advertising for food and sugary products and that kind of thing. So I think a slow movement is beginning to make significant positive change, but it all takes such a long time, and that's part of the thing that I find really frustrating. That change cannot happen overnight. It take time. It will probably take a whole generation to find our feet again and to reconnect with food provenance and cooking and the nutritional benefit of good food. I think it will just take a whole generation to achieve that.
Yeah, oh, definitely, because you get the supermarkets where almost you could say the worst of the ultra processed foods are the ones that are easiest access or the brightest colors, so it attracts children. I know they'll be telling their mums and dads, "Oh, that's what we want."
Yeah, I think a lot of responsibility lies upon people at the top to ensure that people on the ground have a sufficient opportunity to eat healthily and to look after their mental and health well-being and physical and emotional well-being. It's all interconnected. We have the greatest obesity crisis and diabetes that we have ever seen in any generation. And the amount of stress that's putting on our NHS service and health providers is phenomenal. And I think the root of it all is food. And I think food should become a priority in people's consciousness, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. As I said earlier, but I just don't feel it should be treated. A meal is not a fuel stop.
No, exactly. It's all part of it, isn't it? It's all part of the experience and allowing food to be accessible, achievable, and enjoyable. It's all of those
Yeah,
things.
well, I think you're certainly making a brilliant contribution as far as getting that message out. Can I ask you about your radio show?
Yes, so I volunteer at my local radio station, 102.5 FM, and we have a daily magazine show called Your Voice, and I produce and present Thursday's show. And it's predominantly all about food, farming, and fishing. And Jim, you've been a guest on it as well. Really, an opportunity to try and bridge that gap between the general public and sort of treat it as a knowledge exchange whereby I invite a guest on every week to talk about whatever they want to champion, whatever they want to celebrate, and whatever their profession is. And it's a real opportunity to really celebrate food producers. I think that all too often there's such negative mainstream press to the detriment of our farmers and our fishermen and women. And I'm here to do the opposite.
And do you just pick people at random, or how do you decide who's on?
Yeah, well, it's one of the a favourite part of the whole process is doing my research and from connections that I've made from publishing my books and really championing local people as well as more household names. So I had Tommy Banks, the chef from Yorkshire, on the show last week, and I've got the Steve and Dave Flynn of the Happy Pair this week, and we've had wonderful people from the British and seafood industry, Mark Hicks, people like that. So it's just such a pleasure, and I love it so much. I love the privilege and the responsibility of having my radio show. And there's everyone. I think there's such a unique charm about radio, which will be around forever. And we play the world's greatest music as well, and it has my love of music with it combined as well. So it's a real lovely channel to navigate. Just making food, farming, and fishing accessible and entertaining. So that's what it's all about.
And if we stray on from there to your books, how did they come about? Have you been a writer or?
No, I've never. I don't come from a writing background. I don't come from a food, farming, or fishing background either. So it was just from being inspired by my farming husband, John, and I was really passionate and enthused to share his story. And there was ever only going to be one book, and I've got 5 now. For my first book, For the Love of the Land, I recruited 40 incredible, innovative, wonderful farmers from all over the UK to contribute a recipe showcasing what they produce, as well as a story written in their own words about what they do, how they do it, and why. And I was really proud that the former NFU president, Minette Batters, wrote the foreword to the book. And it's a real celebration of farming heritage and social history. And I'm extremely proud of it. It won Best Cookbook in Women in Homes Cookbook Awards a few years ago, and it's been received incredibly enthusiastically from the agricultural community. So that I'm really proud of that.
And you went on to you come off the land and went to sea. Did you
Yes.
go from the love of the land first one, to the sea, or did you go 1 and 2 and then to sea?
No, I went from For the Love of the Land to the sea. I think all too often when people think of harvest, they automatically think of the land and think of farming. They don't think about harvest of the sea. And I really believe passionately that when we talk about farming, we need to talk about fishing and vice versa. So I then published For the Love of the Sea, and it's a similar format. I invited 40 incredible, inspiring people from the British seafood community to contribute a recipe showcasing what they catch, as well as, again, a story about what they do, how they do it, and why. So lots of people, fishermen and women, wholesalers, fishmongers, restaurateurs, chefs, people who enjoy the sea in a recreational way, all contributed with beautiful photography. And I'm really proud of it because obviously fishing isn't a subject that I knew anything about whatsoever. And I think when you put a book out there into the big wide world, you almost become quite vulnerable. You become vulnerable to people's critiques and feedback and how it's received. But fortunately, yeah, the fishing industry really like it. So thank goodness for that.
Well, going on from how you speak there about it, the harvest, and they don't connect fishing and the harvest. Just even out of the top of my head, I can name you 3 boats that I know very well and know the one's the harvester, one's the ocean harvest, and one's the harvest home.
Oh,
That's
that's lovely.
all successful fishing boats sailing out of Scotland.
Yeah.
So there is a connection.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a really profound link. We are an island nation after all. And us Brits, it's well known amongst our circles that we don't eat enough British fish and seafood. And I think just to try and really establish a connection between the food producers and the consumers is such an important passion of mine.
Is the island in a common sea? Was that your 5th one?
Yes, that was published in March, and then it was published all over the world in July. And it's Islands in a Common Sea, and it's stories of farming and fishing and food around the world. So it's a similar format. I recruited 25 incredible men and women from all 5 continents to contribute a recipe. And again, stories written in their own words about what they do, how they do it, and why. And it's a real celebration of regenerative agriculture and regenerative aquaculture. And it's a real celebration of championing these wonderful people who are not only producing highly nutritious food, but also looking after their immediate environments and looking after the planet and improving biodiversity, and to prove that it can be done, both can be done at the same time. And the main premise of Islands in a Common Sea is that a farmer's and a fisherman's challenge and solution in this country, in the United Kingdom, is very similar, if not the same, to a farmer and fisherman on the other side of the world. So we have challenges like climate change, conflict, delicate local economies, national, international politics, rising cost of living, rising cost of labour and fertiliser, post Brexit, post pandemic. You know, there's so many challenges and we're all in it together. And I really believe that if we are to make good, positive change to the world, There's more in the world that unites us than what divides us. And if we listen to each other and listen to each other's stories, we can help do that.
What fascinates me from you saying that, Jenny, is you're obviously, as well as a very passionate person, and I just love the way the passion comes out. But I would say you're a very honest person as well, if you don't mind me saying that, because what you said there just now is exactly what I see when I'm looking at your books. It's all about the food and the people, not about you. And I think that's commendable.
Oh, thank you very much. That's really kind. I mean, it's only ever about giving other people a voice in quite a crowded market. There's so many people shouting loud and proud and quite rightly about what their achievements are and what they're doing and why, which is wonderful. But Islands in the Common Sea is really about hope. It's about nature. It's about working with nature and not working against it. And it's about giving people a voice that so often are unheard. And I think it's so important for farmers and fishermen to get their story heard. It is about the food. It is about the people and the story behind it. And to have that opportunity to tell their story it is a massive privilege. And I feel like I have to do them proud and to really treat it with respect and to sort of illustrate their words in hopefully a beautiful way that is respectful. And yeah, it's never about me. It's always about other people.
Well, that's certainly what comes across. There's no question of that. And I think it's brilliant. But the other thing I think is just outstanding is the illustrations, photography. It's just amazing.
It's been a real challenge to get that consistency of standard. Because with Islands in the Common Sea, the publisher and we commissioned local photographers to provide the photography because we wanted to illustrate that story and make it authentic and to allow it to come across the page in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do so. So that was really important. But at the same time, it provided a real challenge to producing the book to maintain that level of standard and consistency throughout. Yeah, and it was a really, really interesting time trying to source local photographers, and just the creative process was just really, really good fun.
You must have had a great time meeting the people and putting it together.
Unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to go and visit all these places because of COVID and because of budget and because having a young family to look after is very challenging in itself. But I have enjoyed meeting some of them now and travelling and getting to grips with the farm and visiting the fishermen. It's all part and parcel and all part of the process. But the favourite part of putting a book together is reading the stories of these people for the first time. It's almost like reading the book for the first time. And that's a really poignant part of the whole process, which I enjoy thoroughly.
Yeah, I just love the fact I would flick through one of your books and I'm looking at the photos and things, and then I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute, there's recipes here, there's things to cook.
There's something for everyone.
Yeah, in fairness to the people you've chosen and their contributions, there's no competition in it. They're all taking their genuine, obviously, they're either their favourite or the one that they do best or whatever. But do you not feel from cooking the best meal you'll cook, Jenny, is food you like yourself?
Yeah, keep it simple. And I'll let you into a little secret on the Seafood Matters podcast. I actually cooked my first ever roast chicken about 3 months ago because I'm not a chef. I'm a very enthusiastically home cook working in the kitchen. And I'm self taught. I never once was able to boil an egg when I went to university. So in my late 30s, I thought, well, if I'm going to get married, I need to learn how to cook. So I taught myself how to make a beef Wellington and stuffed pesto pasta. I just taught myself how to cook basic meals, and I've just expanded that by having all these wonderful recipes. And every single recipe in every book has been diligently tested by me, and I've delegated to friends and family. So every single recipe is tried and tested, which has been really great fun. But I had never ever in my life cooked a roast dinner until just recently. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of that. It's actually more simple than I ever thought it would be. So, so that's really
Yeah,
cool.
but it's basically because you kept it simple. Just let the food do the talking.
Yeah, definitely let the ingredients sing, keep it simple. Obviously, there's a place for really fine dining and food, which I call art, working with professional chefs. There's a place for that as well. But I think for home cooks, I think there's nothing better than just simple ingredients, simple cooking, and producing a simple meal. There's something very humbling and something really beautiful about
Yeah,
that.
it's reminding me of, I've done that quite a bit over the years on judging the seafood cooking competitions. And I was doing it an absolute master of his profession, a top chef. Bruce Sangster, his name. We were looking at this young lad's dish. He's trying to make a real special dish. And Bruce back a long way at the top of his profession. What do you think of this as advice, Jenny? He took the young lad and he says, let's look at your dish here. Going through the plate, you've too many components. And when you see it on the plate, people see it complicated. It's the same way when you're eating it in the palate. You're not picking out the flavours. So I stood back and listened to him, and I thought it was brilliant advice for a young lad. He says, take a look at the components, shut your eyes, look away, name all the ingredients to yourself, and look back, open your eyes. Any of the components that you forgot and you didn't mention, keep them out.
Oh, brilliant.
I thought that was wonderful advice and a great way of putting it.
Definitely. And I'm sure that young lad has gone on to bigger, greater things.
Well, he's in the Scottish Culinary Olympics team now.
Well, there you go. I love how people have those sort of stories where they've been nurtured from people within their industry who are also so passionate about what they do. I think that's brilliant. How
Well,
lovely.
on another occasion, I had the good fortune to meet Rick Stein. He was writing one of his books about going round the British Isles, and he was on Scrabster Market. I knew him through the restaurant, and as I discovered through a mutual friend, he knew me. And we were just talking on the market. What I loved was I always did think Rick Stein did more for the British fishing industry than the British fishing industry did for promoting their own product. I thought he was fantastic. And the way he would do it, and he was always simple. And I always felt any Rick Stein recipe you were going with, you could guarantee you'd have all the ingredients in your house, in the fridge or the larder. Some of the chefs, you would have to go to London and 10 delicatessens to get all the, and
So
we're
true.
just standing watching this at the sale, and he spotted John Dory's, and immediately you could see the wheels going round. He leaned over to me, Jim, and he says, "How much do they go for here?" I thought that's a businessman coming out, not the chef. I said that to her. We just started chatting about it because I think John Dory is just a wonderful species. I just love John Dory. And we started chatting about it, and he turned and he says to me, "Well, Jim," he says, "you know yourself, when you've got nice seafood like that, it's not what you do with it, what you don't do."
Oh, great. Yeah, so true.
And how true is that?
So true. Yeah, definitely. And the thing about chefs is that they are going to be the translators of between consumers. They are the people who are translating that beautiful dish and the beautiful produce and all of that. So yeah, he's one of Britain's greats, isn't
Oh,
he?
absolutely, totally. And I believe Padstow now is called Padstein. I've spoken to different people in that area, Cornwall, other chefs and people with catering kiosks on the beaches and things like that. And everyone just have so much admiration and respect for him. I think it's great.
That is super. Yeah, that is great.
On your books, have you favourites yourself?
Not recipes, and I couldn't possibly choose any favourite stories either. They all have a really significant, special place in my heart. They're all in the book for different reasons. I really wanted to give a good spread geographically and all the food groups represented, and a good balance between the sort of farmed dishes and the fishing dishes. So I don't really have any favourites. I'm just really proud of the book and just really grateful for the generosity of the contributors for being so generous with their thoughts and with their recipes. And a lot of the recipes are handed down from their families and generations. So I'm just really grateful for people being so generous with all their contributions.
Well, as I said, but I think that is great for them as well, because the way you've put that out, I think is commendable, because they've given you their best, and that's what you've put out. You've not edited it to put yourself in front of them.
Yeah, it's all about them. It's all about the food. It's all about sharing stories and listening to each other, and collaboration is the key. Communication and collaboration, those are the two big components that I sort of live by. I think, there's no such thing as competition these days. It's all about collaboration.
It's just reminded me another lovely story Rickstein told me. And he was in Italy, and there was this small restaurant, and they
Yes.
specialized in risotto. And they went in, and an older sort of woman who owned it and cooked, she ran it. And they said to her, right, what's special today on the menu? And she said, the stock is really good. Is that not
Fantastic.
a wonderful reply?
Yeah, I love it.
Jenny, you're at home and you're cooking a nice meal. What would you choose, and would it be your favourite?
I think I have a new favourite, which is just a simple roast chicken with all the trimmings, bacon on top, stuffed with lemon and thyme, with broccoli, roasted carrots, roasted potatoes, which I leave the skin on because I don't like peeling potatoes. But the girls, my children love it, and homemade gravy. I think that's what I'd be cooking at home.
Yeah, it's interesting because with food now, our nutritionist tells me that the food we eat now, a lot of, well, especially that processed foods, a lot of it, the nutrition, like the multi-nutrients and the vitamins, they're all they're all forced out.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything better than just having really home cooked, British, wholesome produce and food where everyone can enjoy it together. And I think that's kind of like a rebellion and a protest against all this food that you see in the shops. And I'll tell you a story. I once went to Malawi, and I went to this local market. And the lady I was with was picking a couple of chickens to take home to have a roast chicken. She brought them back. She literally had to pluck them, slit their necks, slit their throats to drain the blood, and cooked it. And they eat every single part of that chicken apart from the beak. They eat the eyes, they eat the chicken feet, they eat everything apart from the beak. And I think it was such a poignant illustration of us being so sensitized to how food looks and how food is produced and how food is made and how it's harvested. We're used to just going to the supermarkets and seeing chicken wrapped up in cellophane. We never see that connection with chickens and eggs and all of that kind of thing. So I think that was a real pivotal moment in my life where I knew that, this was just the way real people lived, and I had never seen it before in my life. And it was one of the best chickens I've ever had.
On a fishing industry side to that, I remember meeting this amazing guy. He's a Norwegian from the Lofoten Islands. And it's funny, when you mentioned that, it just came to my mind. Do you know what their speciality, if they were having a meal round the table, all the family, do you know what it would be? A
What?
cod head. They
Oh
would
yes,
roast a
yeah.
cod head. And I can remember my father used to tell me when they were kids, there were 7 brothers, they would be fighting over whose turn it was for the eyes.
Can't imagine that in this country, can you?
I have to be honest and say I didn't ever go that far.
Well, I think it's lovely and very comforting that all of these different countries and cultures have their own way of enjoying food. And it just opens your eyes. Waste about 16 billion tons of food every year. So I think it's lovely to sort of have really wholesome stories like that, where it just illustrates how we can enjoy nose to tail food in both farming and fishing.
When you mention nose to tail, did you ever meet Fergus Henderson?
No, I haven't.
I remember his iconic restaurant, Nose to Tail, in London, and it was
Yeah.
literally nose to tail, everything. He was iconic.
Excellent.
Yeah. Jenny, where can our listeners look up and find what you do? And
I have a website, www.jennyjefferies.co.uk, and you can get my books from there. You can find out what I've been up to and what I've got planned for the rest of the year. And yeah, my books are available in all good bookshops. And yeah, and do get in touch if anything inspires you or you want to get in touch for any reason. Do drop me an email.
I take it that's the books For the Love of the Sea 1 and 2, For the Love of the Land 1 and 2, and Island in a Common Sea. That
Yes, correct. Yeah.
amazing books, and I'm convinced that you'll definitely have a great demand for them. So, well, thank you for that, and it was really nice talking to you, Jenny. It'll be a good time to just fold up, and good luck with your career, and thank you for coming on with me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Jim. Thank you.